Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I think some people want parenting to be efficient, or they figure if you do it right, it makes very little demands on your schedule. I think that's a pretty serious mistake.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Well, on this Father's Day week, or a week of preparing for Father's Day at least, we are so excited for the conversation we're having today. My name's Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm the author of 6 books about raising happy families. Kylie, my wife, mum to our 6 kids, is here with me as we prepare for a conversation that I'm surprised that we've never done this before, Kylie, but gee, I'm excited for it.
I don't have too many favourite people, but if I was going to put a list together, Wally Goddard would be at the top of my list. Such a special guest, and I'm so excited that we're getting to talk to him today.
We need to say Professor H. Wallace Goddard. That's the official title. Wally is now a retired...
Well, that's why he's my favourite, because I don't have to call him that. I can just call him Wally.
Professor H. Wallace Goddard is a former professor of family life development from the University of Arkansas. He worked with Stephen R. Covey on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, which was like a follow-on to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, has been instrumental in shaping my life. I think when I was in my late 20s and we had the big blow up and I decided to leave my radio career and try to be a better dad, it was actually because I was reading some of Wally's parenting guidance and advice. This is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was reading his stuff on the internet and I was just so taken by his compassion, his alternate view of parenting, and it happened to marry in beautifully with somebody who couldn't be more different as a human in terms of their politics, in terms of their view on the world, Alfie Kohn. But these two people coming from completely different ends of the spectrum have been so fundamental in shaping the way that I live my life. And we've got him with us right now, chuckling in the background as we talk about how amazing he is. Hello, Wally.
Hey, it's good to be with you. It's always a delight to be with you, in fact.
Now, we should also mention one reason that I think that Wally's writing has been so foundational in impacting the way that we do things and the way that I do things is we share a common faith. And so much of what Wally has written, while there is some for secular audiences, also has a religious slant to it. And I think that that's really what grabbed me. So, Wally, a question that I've actually never thought to ask, and this question literally popped into my head this morning as we were preparing for our conversation with you. You used to be a high school teacher, and then you did a complete backflip and went back to school as a mature adult. Why did you become a parenting expert? How did this happen? I've never asked.
Well, I taught physics and math in high school for years, along with some other subjects like gifted and talented and et cetera. But what I found is that as our children were growing, I really had a yearning to do it right. I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to do it poorly. I didn't want to feel stupid every day. And I thought, okay, so why don't I read some things? So I read some things and found there was still more. I took a class from Utah State University and found that, wow, there's a whole world out there of insight. So we sold our house, we quit teaching and went to Utah State University and got a PhD in family and human development. And wow, what new vistas it has opened up for us.
Maybe that's why we get on so well, because
I feel like I'm listening to our story just a little.
Kind of what I did. For those who are new to the podcast, that's kind of our story. I gave up a radio career, went back to school, started all over again, and 8.5 years later had a PhD in psychology.
Isn't it amazing how it opens up your mind to things you never thought about? You didn't even know to ask the questions before, and so now you can think in entirely different ways.
Yeah, all because we don't want to feel dumb as dads. We wanted to get it right.
Yes.
So, Wally, you're a grandfather now. You have 3 children, all growing up, living their own lives. But your family life was a little bit more complicated than just 3 kids. You opened your home up to many children over the years. Can you give us a little background into family life for you?
Yeah. Oh, boy. We learned so much from each set of experiences. From our children, we learned so much joy. We just found it amazing every day to see how our children were growing. And of course, we were challenged by them, but we had over the years about 20 different foster children. And wow, talk about eye-opening. And it taught us so much humility because we realized that our glib idea that taking these runaway angry teenagers and treating them kindly and providing a predictable environment would somehow change things quickly and dramatically was just naive. It was silly. And it takes years to build up that pain, and it takes years to change the way they see the world. So that experience was very formative for us. Plus, we had a lot of miscarriages, 20 plus miscarriages, and that was one of the reasons we started having foster children, was because we wanted our home to be busy with growth and laughter and learning. So we had foster children when we weren't able to have children early on in our marriage.
I wish Nancy was here with us right now.
Me too.
She is, I'm going to cry because I just love that woman so much. And to listen to your story and to recognise the heartache that was involved in the process of you opening up your home and being this safe place for these troubled children just melts my heart. One of the things that really has stood out to Justin and I over the years as we've associated with the two of you is just the immense joy that you find in life, and specifically in your role as parents. And I'm wondering if you can share with us maybe a few things that you learnt through that process.
Oh, boy. Yeah, a few things we learned. I mean, one was that you have to plan to invest time, a lot of time. I think some people want parenting to be efficient, or they figure if you do it right, it makes very little demands on your schedule. I think that's a pretty serious mistake.
Yes.
I think of, for instance, when in the evening after teaching all day long, I'd be sitting reading, and I was just really absorbed in what I was reading. And our little boy, Andy, would come up and say, "Dad, can we take a walk around the block?" And I'd say, "Sure," as soon as I just finished this chapter. And after a few times, Andy said, "Dad, you say that every time." And wow, it is just painful to face yourself and realize that you've been lying to yourself and to your son, saying essentially, "I really want to be a good dad. I want you to feel like I'm really present. But boy, I sure don't want to waste any time unless it's absolutely necessary." And that's the wrong way of thinking about it. When you enter parenting, you ought to say, "This is one of the most important things I'll ever do. It'll have more impact. It'll leave a more important legacy than anything else I will do. And I intend to be present. I intend to invest myself, heart and soul, into this job." And so I can drop my book and take a walk around the block with Andy and not be impatient trying to get around the block and get back to my book, but stop and throw rocks and pick up sticks and enjoy life with that little boy who's transformed our lives.
Wally, I'm sitting here and I'm feeling indicted in the most beautiful way. Like I remember one time I did a parenting workshop and someone at the end of it said, "I've never felt so good being made to feel so bad." And I'm kind of feeling that myself right now. I'm looking at Kylie. She's sitting across the table weeping as we listen to this profound and yet so simple an insight. We have, we could listen to you share stories like this all day, and I think this is why we love you so much. After the break, we're going to ask you a few more questions about why this matters so much, especially in the lead up to Father's Day as a dad, but more generally just for parents.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
For a happier family, try a Happy Families membership, because a happy family doesn't just happen. Details at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And today we have one of our most favourite human beings of all time. We're talking to Wally Goddard, Professor H. Wallace Goddard, for those of you who aren't so lucky to call him Wally. But I'm wondering, before we get back to Wally, Justin, can you tell me why Wally is so important to you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's really, really easy. So when we had Chanel, our eldest, and she was 2 or 3, I had gone from being the father who knows exactly how to raise other people's kids to having my own and discovering that little baby had turned into a toddler and I had no idea what to do. And I was trying all of the harsh, punitive parenting, like the stuff that most of the parenting programs that are out there talk about, the 1, 2, 3 magic sort of stuff, the triple P parenting, the praise the positive and then use time out. And I was getting cranky and it just was not working. And I was desperately trying to find something else. And I stumbled upon an article written by some guy over in Arkansas in the United States. I'm like, this is nice. I like this. It feels good. It resonated with my soul. And I started reading everything that he wrote. And he's one of the central reasons that I left my radio career and went back to school so I could be a better dad, because I actually, I'm going to get weepy. I wanted to be as good as him. I wanted to be able to do, as a dad, the things that he obviously did perfectly because he wrote about them so well. And so I quit my career and I went back. And what's really interesting about this is in about our second year of me being a full-time student with 3 kids and a mortgage and all the stress and all the pressure that we were under, Wally was invited to come to Australia to participate in an expo on families. It was in Brisbane. It was called Family Expo. And I contacted the organisers and I said, I love this guy. He's amazing. I would really love it if I could somehow meet him backstage after he's given his plenary keynote session or something like that. Like if I could just say hello and tell him what an influence he's been. And the organiser said, well, Justin, we can probably do better than that. How would you and your wife, Kylie, like to be Wally's chaperone for a day, and you can spend time with him and his wife Nancy, and you can take them wherever you want, up and down the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, anywhere in Brisbane, and spend the day with them. And I was I was yes, and that's what we got to do. You and I were introduced to them. We took them to Pimpamar Strawberry Farm and ate ice creams. We went down to the Gold Coast and showed them some of the beautiful scenery. And then we got to spend that day with them at the conference. And we even, because they're from America, they didn't know what pavlova was. So we got to hang out in the hotel room and share some pavlova with them that night. They invited us back to the hotel room and we got to do that. And I think that to answer your question succinctly, because obviously I don't know how to speak briefly, kindness, wisdom, an incredible example, such humility. And I mean, Wally and Nancy just embraced us and said, we love you guys. Come and spend time with us. I've written a book at his house over in Utah because I couldn't get it written here because there's too many kids and too many demands on me. I could just keep on going on and on, but that's why. And I think that's why it's great to have him in this Father's Day week as we reflect on what's great about father figures, mentors and dads.
I don't know whether you remember this, Wally, but one of my first memories of that trip was you had given your workshop in the morning, and come break time, all of the workshop participants were out in the foyer area and they were going to talk to all of those speakers who had been speaking at the same time.
All the speakers were a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Sign books,
and
that
you
sort of
had your
stuff.
books to sell.
Yep.
And at that point in time, we had a 6-month-old baby, and here was H. Wallace Goddard, and that's how we knew him at that point. You had my 6-month-old baby in a cardboard box, and you were pushing her around on the ground like she was in a choo-choo train. And what blew me away in that moment is not knowing you personally the way we now know you, was seeing this person who in my mind was so important, and there were so many other important people who wanted your time, but your attention was on a little 6-month-old who today doesn't even remember that experience.
But we do, don't we? Because that was so much fun to be with someone who's enjoying life and to enjoy it, embrace it in its fullest.
But Kylie, that experience, I think, maybe even better than everything that I said, encapsulates why I wanted to talk to Wally this week and why we wanted to be able to share this particular podcast episode with everybody, because Wally has a heart for sharing and kindness. And frankly, Wally's not that interested in the important people in the room. He's interested in people who love their kids and want to learn and grow. And he's actually interested in their kids and seeing them light up with delight and smiles.
Well, over the years, as we have continued to build the relationship that we now have with Wally and Nancy, I often hear, Wally, I hear your voice and Justin's larynx, and things come out of his mouth, and I just know that it is your wisdom and your influence that has completely and utterly helped to change Justin's heart and mold him into the dad that he is today. And we're so delighted to be able to celebrate, I guess, our Father's Day, because Father's Day doesn't happen in September for you guys in America, but to celebrate our Father's Day and to acknowledge the influence that you've had on Justin in his role as a dad.
Well, I'd sure be glad if we got to spend more time together. We have loved being with you and your family, and I remember not only that you brought Pavlova to us in our hotel room, but we got to play with your kids, and it was great fun.
We will get back there, we promise. So, yes. Wally, in closing up, because we could spend all day talking to you, but...
Yeah, I feel like we haven't even started.
knowing that we're the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now, I'm wondering if you can impart 2 or 3 bits of wisdom. I know this is going to be really hard for you to choose 2 or 3, but if you could share 2 or 3 pieces of wisdom, insight that you think have been instrumental in helping to create your own happy family.
Bearing in mind that we heard one just before the break that was just heart-stoppingly good.
I'm stealing another 2 or 3. Is that okay?
I think so.
Another would be to teach compassion by living compassion. And often we want to teach compassion through a lecture. And it doesn't ring true when we do that. And I think of the example of a dad who was frustrated with his little boy who was playing with Legos and didn't want to go to bed. And the dad kept saying, no, it's almost time. You got to go. You got to get your sleep. And I think about how the dad ultimately got mad and grabbed the boy and dragged him to his room and put him to bed angrily. What if Dad taught compassion by living compassion? What if he knelt by his son and said, show me what you're building. Tell me about it. How far along is it? I mean, what's your next step? Wow. Is this a good stopping place, or do you need 2 more minutes to finish what you're doing, and then let's you and me go to bed and let's tell us each other's stories as I tuck you in? I mean, the way children learn compassion is by experiencing it. So that would be a big one in my view. And another one is to enjoy life together. One of our daughter once said to me, Dad, joy is a good thing, but you've just taken it too far.
Stop having so much goodness in your life.
And, somehow we've learned to manage some of the anxiety and fear and tiredness. And we've tried to teach ourselves to really focus on the joy, the goodness, the happy, the connection. And by doing that, we have filled our lives with a level of happiness that's grand. So enjoying life together with our children, taking their hand and going for a walk, or when we go visit the grandkids, Nancy always fills a box with games that are not any better than the games they have, but they're new, unfamiliar to them. And she also happens to take some bubble gum, and the kids love seeing Nancy, and she makes peanut butter balls with them. And anyway, those little things say we love life and we love you, and it makes a connection that otherwise doesn't grow.
Wally, since we are celebrating Father's Day, I'm wondering if you might tell us a few things about your dad. What are the lessons that you learned that you have taken into your fathering as a result of the way you were parented?
Yeah, he must be pretty good to have a son like this guy.
I love that question. Thank you for asking it. I think that my dad is one of those kind, good people who always wanted to do good and do what was right. He was also very confused by parenting because we were growing up and being smart alecks and acting like kids and then teenagers. And I think he was confused by it and didn't know what to do. But now, from the perspective of adulthood, I see a man who loved his kids and wanted the very best for them, but was quite lost about how to do what he believed was right. He just, in all the processes we talk about in parenting, Dad didn't know those. And he'd had good family, but he just didn't know the ways to get beyond the smart aleckness that we brought as children. And so I think my dad, his example of goodness and earnestness is one reason I wanted to know more. And the perplexity I saw in his eyes was another reason I wanted to know more, so that I could do what my dad always wanted to do.
Wally, thank you so much for spending some time with us on the Happy Families podcast today. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the way that you live and the goodness that you share with everyone who comes in contact with you. If people wanted to find out more about you, the things that you've written, the way that you can help them to make their families happier, where would be the best place to send them so that they can access some of your wonderful resources?
I try to post what I'm currently working on Facebook. So if they go to H. Wallace Goddard on Facebook or Dr. Wally on Facebook, they can find what I'm currently working on. We have a website, and it's not up to date right now, so I'll recommend Facebook as the place that's most current.
Well, I follow you on Facebook, and I love it. A quick note for those who don't have a religious bone in their body: there are some religious themes there, because obviously that's a central part of who you are and the way that you bring yourself to the world, Wally. Thank you so very, very much for sharing what you've shared with us today. It has lifted me again, and I'm grateful for it.
It's an honor to talk to you. Thank you.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media, with Craig Bruce as our executive producer. We would love for you to check out Wally's site on Facebook, but we'd also encourage you, if you're looking for premium content to make your family happier, our very best stuff is in our Happy Families membership. You can find all the information about that at happyfamilies.com.au.